Hello and good morning. Or, yeah, still morning. Good morning, everybody. My name is Maria, and I'm the developer advocate at Botkube. I have a special guest, Evan. He is our head of growth at Botkube. And today we'll be talking about some 5 essential Kubernetes monitoring and troubleshooting tasks to automate with Botkube. And before we get started, Evan, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi. Like Maria said, I'm the growth lead over here at Botkube. I've been able to write quite a few articles just on various topics Kubernetes related. So we have help articles in our learn section. Some of our blogs. I've helped with some of those. So give them a read. Let us know how we're doing. Love the feedback if it's helped you out with your cluster at all. So
Okay, great. So we're just going to dive into some of the topics. So we're going to cover about monitoring with Prometheus, working with Kube Control, talking about our ChatGPT plugin, some GitOps functions with Argo CD, and then being able to easily install your CLI. So before we do that, do we have any questions from the audience? I see we have some people here. As you all know, like Kubernetes is really challenging to deal with, especially when you think about like the complexity of having like a layered stack. So 9 times out of 10, you're not just like running Kubernetes bare metal. You're not just working with one tool and you're not just working with one person. So there's a lot of grunt work that goes into having a very efficient, well, just a functioning setup in general. So the goal of Botkube is to automate and take out a lot of those manual processes out of the monitoring and troubleshooting process. Because what I know from my system design background is the more you can automate, the more reliable and efficient your system becomes. So here at CubeShop, we're a remote first company. So communication can be challenging, especially when you have like cross country, cross continent teams. So a situation where like time is of the essence and then you're having to rely on somebody to kickstart a manual process and that person might be asleep because they're in a different time zone as you and you have only a certain amount of time for something to go from an incident to an outage. So being able to remove some of those manual steps can really make or break your team's reliability and average like mean time to recovery. Do you have any thoughts about automation in the Kubernetes space and how it can help teams?
yeah, no, that's great. You touched exactly on it. It's also great. The other great thing about moving the troubleshooting into like something like a Teams or Slack, where there's a record of it. It also gives you, like I've just mentioned, the record of it, right? It gives you, hey, this error happened, and like you mentioned, if that developer or DevOps engineer is asleep, right, in a different country, right, you can look what they did last time, and you can almost gain a little bit of troubleshooting insight just by viewing what others have done in the past. But no, there's other important things, just small tasks. Nothing's better than automating, small mundane tasks that you have to do weekly, or something like pulling cube logs, or just the logs of anything, right? Just from the cluster or anything, right? Just if you can take it one step closer to solving the issue with an automation, it saves you that much time, right? So.
Great. Oh, and then we have a viewer. Hello from Flux. Hello. We are Flux integrators and users here at Botcube. We have a Flux integration that I like to use a lot. It makes the Flux diff really easy. So, fun fact, I actually learned how the diff works via the Botcube plugin and having to play around with it. Because before, I kind of abstractly knew about like, okay, this is how GitOps works. I, installed it. I did some basic workshops, but then seeing it inside of a engineering workflow really made that process easier. And going back to that automation piece of like having things in a record. So when you have teammates of varying levels of Kubernetes knowledge, by having that whole process outlined in a common space, you can reduce redundancy even with like things like onboarding and like team knowledge. So you can have that knowledge be shared and you can prevent like people from having the same types of questions. But going into that, we can just get started on some of the things that we're going to be working with today. So one of the tasks that you can automate with Botkube, you can automate your real-time monitoring with Prometheus. So I'm going to show you a quick demo. Apologies for the quality. I don't know why it looks so janky. Let me pull that up right now. All right.
Yeah. Prometheus is one of those ones that's everyone's used to hearing about for Kubernetes monitoring anyway, right? So this is a very good first place to start with a lot of Kubernetes monitoring and automation.
Yes, for sure. Oh, look at that quality. Terrible. Anyway, so with the demo where you start here in your Slack channel or your Teams channel or whatever you like to use. And typically when you're hooking up Prometheus alerts, you'll have to set up a webhook and it's only one direction. So you just get, random alerts from Prometheus. It's hard to filter those alerts. You can't separate them. You can't separate them by channel. You can't filter like the level of importance. But with Botkube, you're able to kind of reduce the noise that goes on in your Prometheus setup. So this is installing it. So all you have to do is you can go to the dashboard, install it quickly. You just need your Prometheus endpoint. Let's skip ahead. Okay, so we see here your Prometheus. Hold on. 1 second. All right. So you see here your Prometheus dashboard. You see that you have one crash looping pod. And then you can delete that pod. And then you're going to run this Spring Boot app on that pod, and then you can see it refreshing. So you'd have to go to your dashboard typically without Botkube. So when you're thinking about context switching, it can be challenging to go back and forth. So when you have a issue that pops up immediately, having to go back to your dashboard, and a dashboard that you and maybe a few other DevOps engineers are seeing can be challenging. Okay. Why is this quality so terrible? I'm so sorry. But with Botkube, you can see these Prometheus alerts coming in. And you're able to
flooded with the alerts for sure.
Sorry, what?
Getting flooded with the alerts for sure. That's classic Prometheus.
Yes, definitely. So you can see like all of the alerts coming in, and then you can have it filtered by your channel. So not everybody needs like to have the Prometheus flood be in their workflow. So your SRE team or your lead DevOps engineer can get like this raw alerts, like these raw set of alerts. But then with Botkube, you can filter them down to the things that are most important. You can see their state and their status, and you get a little description on what is actually happening. So you see, like, for example, this one, it's in a pending state. Then you can see that the default is missing its evaluation. And without Botkube, you wouldn't be able to filter this information. You just get it without context. Okay, so that is the demo. Oopsie. So Okay, have you seen the alert manager? That's great. Have you seen the
Yes.
alert manager alerts? They're a bit more friendly than Prometheus Firehose. Yes, definitely. Um, they're more organized. But one good thing about Botkube is you can also put in the alert manager alerts. I don't have the demo with me right now, but then you can act on them and sort them as well. All right.
No,
Any
that's the
questions?
perfect comment because it's you know, adding just the alert manager as like a filter into Botkube is going to help kind of slim down a little bit on those on those Prometheus fire hosts, like you put it. So, but yeah, Botkube even like Maria says, it gives you the full control to which ones are important, which ones need to actually show up in this channel, right? So, um, yeah,
Great.
thanks for the
Okay.
comment.
Yeah, thank you for commenting. So next we're going to talk about, so we talked about like the receiving part of Botkube and how it can automate some of that monitoring. But it's not only one way, it's bidirectional. So I'm going to show you how you can act on those events or alerts that you get. So I'm going to show you my window. So I have Botkube set up. This is kind of a little mess. I'm going to be honest. There's so many different clusters in here. But if you go through this workflow, you have Botkube installed. You know what kind of cluster you're using. You can sort aliases or executors. So then you see when you have a pod that gets created, you get more context. You get the cluster it's from, the namespace is in, and some particular recommendations that you get. You can run cloud list instances, so you can see, okay, which clusters are going to be in which channel, so you can organize it that way. And then when you get errors, it gives you additional context, so it tells you where the error is and why the error occurred. So I have two different errors. I have persistent volumes claims error, and I have a scheduling error. And then I'm able to run a kube kube control get pods and then see what's going on in my cluster immediately. So this enables you to organize all of your alerts and then be able to kickstart that troubleshooting process all in one area. So when you're working in tandem with a group, you can remove a lot of the steps that would be taken individually by having to go back to your terminal or your CLI to get the information on your cluster. You can do it in Slack from your phone or Teams from your phone and automate that process. So this is a little bit on the executor side.
It suggests a little bit of them too, right? With that, you saw that run command drop down that kind of lets you get an idea of what you can do, right? And what would be suggested. So,
Oh yes, let me show that. So you
there's
can,
always the Botkube help command too if you ever need the
yes,
bigger help. But yeah, the
definitely.
run command, that's what I was talking about, where it quickly is like, here's the supported ones that we can run for this.
And then you can build out your commands easily. You don't even have to, so you don't even have to, you don't even have to type out anything, which I think is great because I can't spell. Um, and it
Yeah,
really like lowers the barrier to entry because I think, especially when you're coming from the developer perspective, the terminal can be kind of intimidating. At least that's for me. Um, so by having it in a fairly friendly UI that people are familiar with, it can be a good I guess, introduction to like Kubernetes management and reduces the workload on the DevOps team. So like the developers don't have to keep on bugging the DevOps teams for smaller issues. So going back to like how systems change when you put in automations, you don't have to you can remove like unnecessary points of communication issues which happen frequently. So the less often you have to like nag somebody, like the faster your process goes, because most people don't like respond instantly, and sometimes people get like information fatigue. So if you keep on hearing the same small problems over and over again, you might be resistant to solving them immediately. So by taking the human element out of that process, it'll just help you streamline your troubleshooting. So we talked about monitoring. We talked about acting on that with kube control. You're also able to use ChatGPT as a reference. Um, so with our doctor plugin, you're able to easily access ChatGPT about Kubernetes information, recommendations, and guidance just via the OpenAI API that you can have right in your communication platform. So I'll show you what that looks like right now. Give me 1 second.
It couldn't be a demo without an AI feature. That's
Exactly. This is not sponsored by OpenAI, by the way. I wish so. Okay, so in this example, I'm going to say at Botkube Doctor, which is the name of our plugin, and I'll say, okay, what's the difference between kubectl describe and kubectl logs? So if you're a developer and you keep on hearing certain terms, you can get that information instead of having to context switch and go to Kubernetes docs or go ask somebody or go to Stack Overflow. And then from there, you can use that information and act on it and just speed up your troubleshooting process. And then you can further filter what you get. So perfect. So this is just like one example of like how to use the plugin. Okay, let me stop sharing. So you can get your information and then you can just go instead of having to go from screen to screen. And then I don't know if you're like me, your attention slips and then you went to go look at Kubernetes docs and then now you're on Twitter and then now you're listening to Kelsey Hightower's, Twitter space and then you forgot what you were doing in the first place. But by having it all in a central place, you can stay focused and improve your workload, which I think is great. Any thoughts about ChatGPT, Evan?
No, I think you hit it perfectly. You're just removing the friction, right? We talked about it for the command line earlier, right? Allowing you to run the commands, the most common simple commands from Slack, and it's the same thing, right? We're allowing you to run your prompts, from Slack or Teams, just removing that extra step. And I think it's also good for when you get those errors that you really are new. I had that plenty, and you can plop it over into ChatGPT, and instead of having to switch over, like you mentioned, you can just prompt it with the last message, right? So
Right.
that's really really helpful. Just removing another point of friction, essentially. So
Right. And this is just the first iteration of having AI. Oh, I hate that I'm going to say this. I sound like a finance bro. AI-driven Kubernetes monitoring. Um,
yes, the AI
so
assistant.
in our next version of this plugin, it's not only going to be a reference guide, it's also going to be able to analyze your like cluster health and then be able to give you smart recommendations based on the specifics of your Kubernetes cluster because not every single workflow is the same. So the goal is to not only, okay, make it easier for you to receive information, but like how do you optimize your monitoring process? How do you optimize your troubleshooting process? So it's really taking that to another level of not just let's make it go faster, but like let's make it more efficient and improved. So stay tuned for that. That's coming
Mhm.
soon.
Yeah, I'm excited about that too because I think it's going to allow you to like the AI to actually do some things as well, right? Like right now we're querying, we're prompting it and we're getting the answers. We still have to take some of the action, but it's so some of the next steps are coming with that. So I'm excited.
But next task we're going to talk about. So this is um, more deep in the GitOps space. Oh, I can't believe we have a Flex friend. I have an Argo demo set up, but so sorry. If you want to check out more of my Flex demos, they're on the YouTube channel. Um, but what we're going to talk about is using um, Botkube to enhance your Argo Slack notifications. So I know they have a native Argo Slack, but set up, but it's very convoluted, very difficult to get started. I remember when I was trying to like get it up and running, I I had to like restart it 3 different times, and it was just not intuitive. It wasn't very clear. It wasn't very extensible. It was pretty much immutable, which I didn't enjoy, which I didn't like because I feel like with especially with notifications, it changes as you receive it. So what you wanted for your alerting workflow in the beginning might not be what you need in a week or two, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, depending on like what's going on in your team, your cluster, whatever. So I didn't really enjoy that. But with Botkube, it's easier to customize, more intuitive. There's buttons, which I love, love buttons, and it's really easy to go back and forth between the Argo UI and Slack, which I think is great because I kind of no shade, no tea to Argo, but like I find it kind of annoying to get to the UI in the first place. Like I don't like how I have to keep it in a separate tab just because I'll probably forget my password. Um, so that's helpful. So as I set this up, Evan can give a little bit more comments about the thought process behind the Argo CD plugin.
Yeah, the Argo plugin, and as well as we mentioned the Flux plugin earlier, those were kind of the big moves into kind of the GitOps space. We wanted to um, take that same simplicity of monitoring Kubernetes and that we had brought into Slack and Teams. We wanted to take that to the GitOps landscape, and like Maria said, there's just extra buttons, like even just from the setup wizard itself, right? You go to Botkube, app.botkube.io, right? And you sign up and you can start your wizard, and with a few clicks, you can add Argo into your cluster from our screen, right? So yep, right here it is. So that's where it starts, and that's what Maria mentioned earlier. It gives you the buttons. It gives you the automations in an easier fashion. So, ooh, I think you're on mute, Maria.
Okay. I feel like the lowering the barrier to entry to like getting started leads to more retention. So if you are, an Argo head in your company and you want to increase adoption across your team, giving them a process that they don't have to struggle with will allow you to um, like actually have it working in your org and convince them to have it to productionize it. And this is just some more setup. We can skip this. Okay, so this is what it would look like in Slack. Most of these demos are in Slack, but it's the same idea for Teams. So we have our guestbook application, which is just a demo application that they use for Argo. Um, this is the Argo docs, and you can see all of the different triggers that you can adjust. So in Botkube, you can adjust the different triggers that it watches for, because not everybody requires the same stuff. Then you can run commands against it. So you can run a kube control get command. So you can get your application, you can describe your application. So you're able to not only receive the Argo information, you're able to act on it without having to go into the UI. And then this is just
to those
okay.
buttons, like you talked about, just a few
Yes,
buttons to run it.
yes. So it just really streamlines your I was gonna say your process of your workflow of working with Argo. Okay, so here we are in the UI, so we can see that everything is syncing up with Botkube. So you can sync, excuse me, so that you can see it coming up in real time. So this is really great for transparency as well. So if you have like, a few people messing around in your UI, this is good for like having a record, and it says like initiated by. So it'll show you, okay, what is going on in your Argo workflow. Oh, I shouldn't use that word, but your Argo system. So you know who's doing what inside of it. And you can see in real time, okay, maybe this person shouldn't have access to it, or maybe there's a repeated error that's going on. And then by having the progression of health, you can be able to organize your notifications. So you can just have it where instead of it every time a resource is created, you can always put it where every time a resource is deleted or is unhealthy. So, and this will show you that the app is going to be deleted. Perfect. So this is what the Argo CD plugin looks like. So all of these plugins are at the, I'm going to say, infant stage. And this is why we need the community support to tell us, okay, how are you using these tools? Because we have a fairly small engineering team, and they will build what they know. So we'd love to hear more about like how you're using GitOps, what problems you're facing, what does your troubleshooting process look like manually? What are steps that you're looking to either reduce or remove from your process? So we did monitoring, we did our kube control. So we had our information, we acted on that information. We had our Doctor plugin, so we got more context for our information. Then we had our Argo CD plugin, where we kind of combined both of those ideas of you get the information, you act on it quickly with context. And then finally, for fun, we have our exec plugin. So this allows you to I'm not going to say circumvent the full plugins process. So, like I said before, we have a fairly small engineering team, so we can't build plugins at the pace that everybody's using. So every team uses different tools. So we made this exec plugin that allows you to quickly hook up some of the different tools that you're using. So there's tons of examples. I mean, one example is like using WordPress. So you can streamline having your WordPress apps up in Kubernetes and being able to receive alerts for them, be able to act on them. And I'll show you what this looks like IRL.
It's the open book plugin, just basically.
Oh, sorry, open books.
Yeah. No. Well, I mean, that's what I kind of see it as. It's just whatever you want, like any Helm package out there. You can, well, most Helm package, you can figure out a way to get it to work in there.
So this is the example of using a Trivy plugin. So this is like the Aqua security plugin. So this is good for security, looking for vulnerabilities, doing like a security scan. Let me speed this up. Okay, so you just run your Botkube exec install. All you need is you can get it through the GitHub repo that it's hosted in. Then you can start working with that plugin immediately. So you can perform a Trivy scan without having to build an entire Trivy plugin, um, and give you like a quick report summary formatted in Slack. So this is great when you think about like the CNCF landscape, um, where like you're using multiple tools all at once. Um, and a lot of times you need a tool to use another tool and then a tool to organize you using another tool. But with Botkube, you can organize your workflow in your tool suite all in Slack or Teams, which is a pretty universal and pretty friendly UI. So you can have all the functionalities of the different tools that you're using all in one place. So then you can run Helm against it. So you can see all the things. Excuse me.
That Boston meetup
Yeah,
really
it
has
took
you
it's
tired.
no, I don't. It's the traveling. I think. I think I'm ready to be in the same space for more than a week. Um,
Yeah.
excuse me for my yawning. It's interesting, I swear. I'm just exhausted. Um, so this is just one example of many that you can easily just like hook in one of your tools that you use. So actually, if we have any questions, I can ask. Okay, what kind of tools would you be interested in using Botkube with? I'm curious. I know a lot of people have interest in using Botkube with tools like ServiceNow or Datadog, New Relic, where they have a lot of their alerting and reporting in there. I've heard potential use cases with tools like OpenCost. Yes, OpenCost. Yes, OpenCost, where you can have all of your cost optimization reports and resource usage in Slack, so it's in an organized fashion. But yeah, those are the top 5 tasks that you can um, optimize and automate with Botkube. So automation is definitely the future. I think there's a lot of work to be done in the intersection of automation and Kubernetes. It's like for such a smart space, it's kind of surprising how little automation that's in there. So hopefully with Botkube, we can push that forward and make Kubernetes monitoring troubleshooting easy for everybody. But any last thoughts, Evan?
No, yeah, I think you covered a um, good good portion of it, and I think this there's constantly things to automate, and I think that last tip with the kind of the open ended add in whatever tool you're using in your workflow. I think that speaks to it, right? Like obviously we don't have time to get to every single tool out there in the landscape, but everyone has a tool that they need, right? And why not have it be just a button click away in the in Slack or Teams where you're already working, right? So um, no, I think it's exciting, and like we mentioned kind of briefly in it, you look out for that next AI kind of update. It's not necessarily a plugin, more of an update to our existing plugins, but excited for that release and what that's going to bring as well. Yeah,
Okay,
I think that's
great.
everything.
Great. So come check us out on Botkube.io. We have a lot of events coming up soon. Stay posted with us either by joining Botkube Slack or following us on Twitter or LinkedIn. And stay tuned for more content about smart monitoring and more optimization. And I'll see you guys soon. Bye.
See ya. Thank you.